What's up, everybody? I'm Mike from the Bunker Recordings and BetterMixes.com, and today we're checking out the brand new limiter plugin from Mastering the Mix. Limiter claims to be a smart limiter that will help you dial in the best settings to make your track sound awesome. But can it live up to that claim? Let's hop into Pro Tools to find out. Also, quick disclaimer, I was a beta tester for this plugin, so I did get a free copy, but this is not a sponsored video or anything like that, so I'll be telling you both what I like and what I do not like about Limiter. Alright, so here we have Limiter just how it is when you first open it up. So let's just do a quick run through of the interface here. Over here on the left, we have these three sliders. We have Energy, which is going to add some subtle harmonic distortion to your signal. We have Punch, which is basically a transient designer in front of the limiter. And then we have Gain, which is the main input of the limiter. Down here, we have our attack, release, and link knobs. The release defaults to being on auto, but you can turn that off there and then have full control over it. But I found that at least 95% of the time, I very much prefer it with auto release on. So for this example, we're just going to roll with that. And the link control, in case you're unsure, this basically determines how limiter is going to react to stereo information. So if you have it all the way up on 100, whatever happens to your left channel is going to happen to the right channel, exactly the same. So that's going to perfectly preserve the stereo imaging of your mix. On the other extreme, all the way down at 0, this is now going to act as two independent limiters, one for your left and one for your right. On settings more towards this end, you're going to be able to get your mix a little bit louder, but again, it will mess with your stereo imaging a little bit. And obviously you can dial it in anywhere in between. Above those knobs, we have our graphical display, which you will see once we start running some audio through this. Then over on the right, we have 3 meters. We have a dynamic range meter, so showing overall how compressed or dynamic your track is. The higher the level on this meter, the less dynamic. Then we have our LUFS readout and our peak meter. Then below those, we have our ceiling, which is the output level of the limiter, and a bypass and a delta button. Then up top, we have an analyze button, and that's what makes this a smart limiter. We'll check that out in just a minute. Then we have our target preset over here, and that's basically like what you want this master to be. So if you click the drop-down menu there, you can see it defaults to an all-around master, but we also have CD, Apple Music, Spotify, Spotify Loud, Vinyl, YouTube, etc. And based on which one of these you choose, Limiter will make different suggestions to best match whatever platform you're going to. So for this example, let's go with Spotify Loud. So now let's run some audio through this. The track I'm using today is called Not Better by Bonsai Trees. I'll leave a link to their Spotify in the description down below. So for this, you're going to want to loop your loudest section of the song. In this case, that's our second chorus. So I'm going to hit play and then I'm going to click the analyze button. All right, so now that it's done analyzing, you can see that we got a couple of little white dots on some of these knobs and this big white chunk right here. So those are the suggested starting points that Limiter is making for us. So let's start by setting our attack there, and we'll put our link there as well. And then we'll bring our ceiling down. If you're wondering about the ceiling here, the idea behind having that below, just 0 or whatever, is in this case, when Spotify converts your mix into whatever file format it is that they use, if your mix is peaking at exactly 0 or negative 0.1 or whatever, during that conversion process that it's going to go through, a lot of the time you'll end up with peaks higher than that 0 or negative 0.1 or whatever you had it set to. So the idea of bringing it down is leaving some extra room for that to happen without getting any clipping. Most of the recommendations I've seen for Spotify are -1, but Limiter here is recommending -2, so let's just go with that for today. Now, before we bring up our gain into the target area here, I'm going to mess around with the energy and the punch, because both of these add a little bit of gain, so if we end up using some, we'll want to reanalyze and then mess with our gain slider. So I'll just play around with these so you can hear what they're doing. So hopefully you can hear what those were doing. For rock or pop punk or indie rock or whatever this is kind of mixes, I found that I usually like a little bit of both of these, but just a little bit. I find myself usually between like, I don't know, 7 and 12 or 15 or something. So just doing a little bit, much more than that, and it starts to get a little out of hand for me, but again, your taste may vary. So let me just mess with these a little bit more. All right, let's roll with that. So again, like I said, we're going to want to reanalyze now. And now our white blob is back. So let's bring that up. We'll bring it up just to the very bottom end of that for now. And then we'll see where we're at with our meters here. These white brackets are sort of our target area for the preset that we chose. So let's see where we're sitting. And just a warning, this is going to be like 9 decibels louder than it was a second ago. So just a heads up. So there we were within all of these brackets, but on our LUFS meter, we were sort of just barely in it. So I'm going to play it again and just slowly bring up our gain until we're somewhere nice in the middle. Great, so that's looking pretty good. Now, if you go above any of these, limiter will turn the meter red to draw your attention to that. So for instance, if I bring our ceiling up, this one should turn red. So that's a nice way to just kind of quickly see where your mix is at. And you can just click on the meter to reset it so it's not red anymore. So let's just bring that back to our -2. So now let's use our bypass button here to compare our limited mix with the unlimited version and see if we've helped, hurt, neither, see where we're at. So yeah, that sounded pretty good. And as you can see, the bypass button here is level matched, so that's handy. But it's definitely not my favorite version of level matching. I will talk about this more in the outro of the video, so be sure to stick around for that. But I definitely think this could be better implemented. Because one, by turning up the bypass signal to match the limited signal, our bypass signal is now clipping, as you can see up here on our meters. So it's still not really a fair comparison. But also, I would love to see a version of the level matching that matches in real time. So for instance, if we turn it on, let's say there's a nice little button for it right here, as opposed to in here in the settings, it could lock our level to that of the bypassed mix. And then as we bring our gain up, it would compensate in real time, turning the output down, which would make it really easy to dial in the sweet spot here where the mix sounds the best. So you can really find that fine line between getting it nice and loud, but also not destroying your mix. Then obviously you would just turn it off and be on your way. But besides that little complaint, that just sounded really good. Obviously, if you weren't liking what you were hearing when you were comparing, you can go in and tweak these settings. Obviously, you don't have to go with limiter suggested settings, but they are a really good starting point. It's nice to be able to get really close to something really good, super, super fast. Hey, I just want to interrupt the video for a quick second to tell you about today's sponsor, me. Yeah, I'm still sponsoring my video, whatever. But I wanted to tell you about my drum samples. I made these after being incredibly disappointed with pretty much all the other samples I could find. So I figured, hey, why not make some that are way better? So I did. I've got over a dozen kits available covering a wide range of tones, all multi-sampled at multiple velocities for tons of realism. And they start at just $15, or you can get the complete set for $100, which also includes any additional packs I ever make in the future. You can head on over to bettermixes.com/drum samples to check them out. Anyway, back to the video. So now that we've tried this thing out, what are my final thoughts on it? So first off, limiter sounds really good. I've tried pretty much all the popular and some of the much less popular mastering limiters, and I really don't care for most of them. My current go-to is Elevate from Newfangled Audio, but limiter is the first one I've tried that might replace Elevate for me. I haven't spent enough time with it yet to totally decide which I prefer, but regardless, this thing sounds great. And probably its biggest pro is how easy it is to use. Elevate has like 300 knobs and sliders and takes a while to figure out. This thing, on the other hand, only has a handful of controls, and it tells you where to put most of these controls to at least get you close to where you want to go. Because of that, I could see this being super useful to mixing engineers who want to toss a limiter on the mix before sending it to the band as a faux master kind of thing, or just anyone who masters their own tracks but struggles to dial in their limiter to a point that gets the song loud enough without completely destroying the mix. It's not all sunshines and rainbows though. There's one major flaw with limiter that I'm really hoping they address in an update at some point, and that's how the auto gain works. Our brains tend to trick us into thinking that louder sounds better, and that's why gain compensation is so important. If we're using a compressor or something, level matching allows us to be sure that we're actually improving the sound, not just making it louder. Well, when it comes to limiters, their job is to make things louder, so it can be really hard to judge if we're hurting our mix in the process without level matching. Newfangled Audio Elevate handles this really well. You can turn auto gain on, and then when you drive the input of the limiter, it compensates in real time so you can hear right when it starts to go too far without being fooled by the volume difference. Then you turn auto gain off, and you're good to go. With limiter, the auto gain only affects the bypass signal, so you're still kinda guessing where that sweet spot is on the input gain. Then when you bypass it, yeah, it's level matched, but by bringing the unlimited mix up to match the level of the limited mix, the bypassed version is almost certainly going to be clipping, so it's still hard to compare. Plus, if you just want to turn limiter off for a second, you either have to make it inactive as opposed to bypassing, or go into the settings to turn off auto gain. Otherwise, bypassing it will still be boosting your signal. If mastering the mix fixes this at some point, I really think this plugin will be an absolute home run. I'll link to Mastering the Mix's website in the description down below if you want to demo limiter for yourself. Also, be sure to head on over to bettermixes.com to find your new favorite drum samples, to learn about my mixing course, one-on-one mix coaching, and a whole lot more.